Hey there, welcome to Food on the Mind, where we help you to find freedom from food obsession. My name is Jeb Stewart Johnston. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, we're going to be talking about something that is most likely the most common occurrence in terms of discussion and concern and questions that I get in my practice around health, and that is how to navigate social situations, be that nights out, friends, family, dinners out, work trips, etc. It's a time of high stress and something that people really struggle with. Again, if you're new here, I would love it if you'd give me a follow and subscribe to the channel here, and you'll get plenty more information about managing your health, your wellness, your fitness, your nutrition, and basically being able to find that life free from food obsession without going on another diet. That's what we're here for. So, at the topic at hand, basically we want to talk about kind of a bunch of different things here. But really, it's kind of this idea of struggle, of worry, right? Like, we're coming to the end of summer, but summer is a time where on a Thursday night, you might get an invitation for Friday afternoon to come to a pool party at a friend's house. And maybe you're already kind of struggling, maybe you're not super comfortable wearing a bathing suit. And so this thought of like finding the right bikini or the right swim trunks is kind of at odds. Ooh, do I wear a shirt, right? And so you already are having this body confidence issue. And then on top of that, well, you've been trying to get your nutrition in order, and you're going to a place where the food is unknown. There's going to be lots of chips, lots of dips, maybe a bunch of alcohol, and it starts to make you nervous. And part of you just says, I'd rather just not go. I'd rather stay home. Well, when we're trying to pursue greater health, it really is a holistic manner. And socialization is probably the far greatest impact on longevity, right? People that don't socialize, people that isolate, tend to struggle with health later in life. People that have strong and robust social networks tend to do much better. And we find ourselves siloing out even worse with the advent of social media because we don't have to see people in public, right? So this idea that, oh, well, I'm going to stick to my diet if I just never go anywhere, that's not healthy. And we're searching for better health. So we want to be able to socialize. We want to be able to go out to events, but we also want to manage our goals and our values and be in alignment with those things as we move, into these social environments or work environments. So it's really important to practice proper management of that. So we want to talk about the importance of not just the social events themselves, but having some strategy of how to approach it, right? This is not to say we're going to make strict rules or anything like that, because anyone who follows me or has for any time understands that I'm really against the idea of strict rules. Maybe systems, maybe principles, maybe values. Those things are all very important. But when we start to place rules on things, we get into this all or nothing, black or white thinking that really tends to sabotage and lead towards emotional eating and binge eating episodes long term. So we want to make sure that we don't fall into this trap of food rules and instead think with some ideas of principles and strategies. So, one of the big things we want to talk about first is understanding that there are going to be triggers involved in this, right? There are things that are going to make social events harder. And that is, starting off with just the idea of social cues. The fact that there are people around you who you socialize with, who maybe you want to impress, who are your friends, and maybe they're drinking and maybe they're eating things and they're, pressuring you to do so. Maybe there's someone who is really comfortable with their body. Maybe they're one of those people who seems to eat whatever they want and never puts on a pound, right? And so it can be really easy to fall into that trap of, well, the social pressure is there. We've been talking about it since we're kids, right? Ever since you're a kid, like, oh, don't give in to peer pressure. But we all know that it's very powerful and it's really hard to say no once we're there. We also want to understand the emotional connections involved, right? Like when we're talking about a social situation, it could be our kids that are friends together. It could be our family members. God knows that it's family. That comes with a whole other set of baggage. But in any situation, there's going to be some kind of emotional connection. And I think before you go into that process, understanding that those are there, understanding potential triggers can be very beneficial in helping you to navigate the situation. And then the environment, right? So just the fact that you're around a bunch of food. I'm not someone who really struggles that often with emotional eating. You put a bowl of chips in front of me, and and small talk, I don't like small talk. So being in like small talk conversations, like I'm going to eat a ton of chips, right? I have to be aware of that environmental factor that's going to also trigger some emotional factors of, hey, I don't really love being in crowds and I don't really enjoy small talk. So understanding that about myself helps me to better understand the environmental triggers that might come up. Now, before we start, we want to think, first off of how we can prepare ourselves best. And we want to talk about the physical, the emotional, spiritual, environmental things, right? And so the first thing we want to is to kind of think about a shift in our mindset, right? Rather than thinking of like, oh no, here's a place where it's going to be all these things and all these people and et cetera, all the things that I'm worried about. Think instead of the opportunities there, right? Oh, this is great. I have an opportunity to go sit by the pool. Oh, this is awesome. I have a chance to flex my skills that I've been working on in the past couple weeks in order to start to manage these emotional eating or binge eating episodes, right? These are opportunities for me to try that out. Ooh, this gives me an opportunity to make that recipe I've been dying to make. If you can start to think about going into a moment, an event, and being positive about it, thinking about the good parts of it, it's going to be a lot more helpful. This isn't to say we have toxic positivity. No, we always are going to be aware that there are negatives to things, and that's okay. We just want to go into it with a sense more of neutrality rather than negativity. If you think you're going to fail, you're probably going to be correct in that assumption. Next, you want to set intentions. So just like you're doing with anything you're practicing, you want to have a good idea of what you're looking to get out of the event, right? So let's say it's a work event, and you're like, okay, I'm going to have one cocktail. I'm going to switch to club soda after that. I'm going to eat a few of each of these appetizers, whether you know what's coming or not. But I am going to make sure that I plan on having a meal afterwards or beforehand, because the food there is not going to be great, and it's just going to be a lot of like little things, and I'll pick, and it won't really be satisfying, and it's not going to be helpful to my long-term goals. Or maybe you're going to some wedding where there's going to be a grandiose dinner, and you're like, I'm going to eat, and I'm not going to worry about it. Set your intentions ahead of time, and then that way you're set. And then last, eat beforehand, right? This is going to help us with that physical aspect. Don't go into an event hungry, right? I think a lot of people will say, oh, fast for the whole thing. And that leads to binge eating in 90% of my clients. Most of my clients engage in emotional eating or binge episodes mostly because they're hungry. Yes, there are the emotional aspects, all of the things that lead to that, but the final straw is almost always hunger. And if you avoid food all day in the hopes that you're going to make it kind of equalize at dinner or at the event, you're probably just going to end up overeating by more. So the advice is really to eat something beforehand, feel like you've gotten a little bit of a meal first so that you can go understanding. Now, if you plan on really just eating the meal there, then don't eat beforehand. Think about it as a regular day. So during the event, we're going to have some strategies that we want to embrace. And the first one is one that we work on every day, and that's just mindful eating. Starting to really pay attention to the food in front of you. The way it smells, the way it looks, the way it tastes, the way that it feels in your mouth. Really being in that moment. And this can be hard when you're engaging in conversation, when you're around a lot of people. You might feel as if, hey, I am not really able to pay attention to the food in front of me because of all this other stuff going on. That's fine. So maybe you engage in some conversation, you excuse yourself, you go make yourself a plate, allow yourself to be in the moment and be present with that food, and then go back to engaging in conversation or whatever it was that you were doing prior. The next thing you want to do is think about portion control, right? The great thing about most social events is you get a little tiny plate. So cool, fill that plate up. Maybe have yourself an idea of like, okay, I'm going to have 2 plates today. Otherwise, think about plating your plate as you would at home. I really like the idea of having a quarter of that plate be, a quarter to half of that plate being lean proteins, the rest vegetables and fruit, and then maybe a little bit of starchy carbs. And if you're going to be at a social event with a lot of desserts, maybe you just focus on protein and vegetables for your main meal and know that there's going to be some desserts coming. So let's save a little bit of room for those guys because that's probably going to be the best thing there. But so thinking about your portion control is going to be vitally important. Next, we want to stay hydrated, right? Alcohol is probably going to lead you to having difficulty making good decisions. So if you can drink preferably non-alcoholic beverages, club soda is a great one. Keeps you full. Feels like you got a little something in there, and that's helpful. And then engaging in non-food activities, right? We were talking about having conversations with people, dancing, having a good time. Like, if you're, you might go to an outdoor event where there's sports involved. If you're at a pool, going swimming. Things that are not food oriented, that can keep you away from the snack table and away from overeating, right? We're not trying to avoid eating, we're trying to avoid overeating. There's going to be a lot of social pressure, right? We understand that. As someone who doesn't drink, I get a lot of questions. Oh, would you like a cocktail? No, I don't drink. Okay, it's usually pretty quick, pretty easy, ends the conversation like that. But you also have to understand no is a complete sentence. So if someone offers, you just politely decline, right? You don't have to make up a whole story or anything like that. Just say, oh, no, thank you, I'm good. The other thing is bring your own food, right? And I'm not saying bring your own Tupperware to eat by yourself. Bring something for people there, something that you know you would like to have. I often like to bring a fruit plate, mainly watermelon, because I am addicted to watermelon over the summer. I just eat tons of it. So it's a great thing for me to bring because I'm going to eat it anyways. But think about that. Maybe it's maybe it's a crudité, maybe it's a charcuterie, whatever it is that you want to have, something that fits in with your goals. And then that way you're sure to have something there that you can eat. Next is having a little support, like have somebody there. It's kind of like when I go into an event, my wife knows that she introduces herself to everyone that I know because I'm terrible with names and I forget a lot of people's names. So she knows that she's going to say, hi, I'm Sarah, to get their name from them. And I'm still going to forget it probably because I'm terrible like that. But it's the same idea of having that little support system when you go in to hang out. Hey, all right, I'm trying not to eat all of the cocktail weenies, right? Like there's 800 pigs in a blanket. I'm going to limit myself to 10, right? Thinking about it like that, having that little support system is going to make things easier. Now, you might go and you might end up overeating. Now, how do you deal with that? Well, this is a lot of what we work on too at Food on the Mind, right? How do you deal with that guilt and shame after a binge or an emotional eating event? Well, the first thing is just self-compassion. We talk about this all the time. Self-compassion is not complacency. Self-compassion is not just excuses, not all these things that you would hear people say they are. In reality, self-compassion is really about giving yourself some grace, understanding, and then taking the time to realize what maybe happened that went outside of what your values are, outside of your goals, so that you can correct it. Right? Self-compassion is not just giving in. The actual part of self-compassion that's important is that you are trying to find a way to do better, right? And so in order to do better, you have to realize where things maybe went in a way that you aren't happy with. How can you improve that? The next is we want to reflect, but not ruminate, right? We're not going to sit here and go over it and over and over. We're going to look at what happened, what we could have done differently, and then move on. There's no reason to try to relive the past because you can't. It doesn't matter. It's gone. We accept. Acceptance is about understanding that that is reality, and we must move on. Next, we're just going to get back on track. We're not going to overly restrict the next day. We're not going to do anything crazy. We're just going to get back into our daily habits, back into our daily routines, and try to create that consistency and that little bit of structure that has served us well up until now. So, again, we talk about kind of the different things that we might go over while we're at an event. And those things are going to be being aware of your triggers beforehand, right? And that could be the emotional ones, right? The social ones, the environmental ones, and then also physical. So if that means having a meal beforehand, do so. But also think about going into the day with intention. So what are you planning to eat? How much are you planning to eat? Are you planning to have a drink? Be really focused on that intentional part because that way you don't have to go in. Because I think the mistake most people make is they're like, I'm not going to eat anything there. I'm going to be stoic. And then when you screw up, you feel terrible, right? Be intentional. Go in and say, no, I'm going to have X, Y, Z, and have flexibility. We think about principles, not rules. There's no strict rules to anything, just some principles to live by, just your values to guide you so that you can maintain congruence with your goals. And the other thing we thought about was just this idea that if you do overeat, afterwards, we don't want to ruminate on it. We just want to reflect on what we did. We want to find a better path forward next time. And we want to make sure that we are setting ourselves up to not repeat the same mistakes. And that's going to help us to grow, to feel competency, and just get more motivation for the next time. I think it's really important to focus on this social events. Now, These things are going to be really hard for you at first. Almost everyone I work with finds that over time, this actually becomes the easiest part of their lives. The funniest thing is that work travel is the thing that when people come to me, they're the most frightened of, they're the most scared of. And by the time we're done our first 6 months, there's no concern at all. And in fact, they often say coming home is much bigger of a struggle than going out on a work trip or on vacation, because they start to realize that all the things they didn't realize were stressors live at home. And they're actually able to let go of a lot of those on the road. They're able to work their skills. They're able to work through the things that we have put in place up to that point. Where at home, it's a lot harder, especially if you work from home, have kids, you have a lot going on. So what we learn is that these skills really do carry over so well that you're able to maintain and make progress on the road versus at home, which can often be more difficult. But that realization helps us to realize the importance of environment and emotion and mental capacity and physical needs while we're in anywhere place, anything we're planning to do. So hopefully you found that video helpful. Again, the whole goal of these series of videos is to help you find freedom from food obsession, really to just kind of let go of those constant thoughts around food so that you can focus on things that matter, so that you can gain better self-confidence to present in front of the board, or you can feel more self-love to finally put on that outfit that you've always wanted to wear, or finally feel that self-trust of going to these work dinners or going to these community events and not feeling stressed about the food choices or lack thereof that you have. So with that, once again, my name is Jeb Stuart Johnston. If you enjoyed this, if it helped, please share it with someone. Please like and subscribe to this video. And if you have any questions, shoot me an email. I would love to help you out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.